Part 43. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 421. After shooting down Lao Ma, Zuyun could finally boldly use his spiritual sense before Lao Zu could catch up. At this time, the old horse seemed like a huge boulder that had fallen from the platform, falling straight down through the dense clouds and mist in the mountains. Zuyun, on the other hand, frantically activated his chaos power, performing thunder escape techniques one after another. Although he couldn't control the distance, his speed was much faster than chasing him by himself. But despite this, Zuyun could only catch up after the old horse hit the bottom of the cliff heavily. A loud noise was heard, and Zuyun also stopped the thunder escape technique, and his body floated down. "Human ant, I want you to die." Lao Ma's eyes widened angrily, and his words were full of pain. Zuyun was unmoved, but he didn't go directly. He didn't know what the Demon King had done. Who knew if Lao Ma had any hidden murderous intentions? He reached out and took out a stack of talismans, more than 10 nameless talismans, and without saying a word, he threw them at Lao Ma. "Damn it!" The old horse roared angrily, turned over, and ran away into the distance. Zuyun secretly rejoiced. As expected, Lao Ma still had some strength left. He didn't know whether it was because the pain caused by the whip was gone, or because the restraint of the demon pill by the talisman was weakened. But what we can know is that since Lao Ma did not attack him head-on, it shows that his strength is still affected. Snort. Zuyun snorted coldly, put the rest of his thoughts aside, and quickly caught up with him using the steps of the immortality secret. The reason why he didn't use the thunder escape technique was that he was afraid that if he chased too closely, he would be forced to jump over the wall, so he would use some sorcery that would lead to the same death. Only when he is completely sure, Zuyun will take action with all his strength. Just like when I was dealing with the Golden Xiao, I used the Earth Wall talisman to completely trap him, and finally used the Wuji sword technique. At that time, Jin Jiao did not have much demonic power to allow him to succeed. He and Lao Ma fought side by side to kill those monsters, but up to this point, Lao Ma hadn't seen much of his demonic power. Even if the nameless talisman worked, Zuyun did not dare to fight rashly. Of course, he also subconsciously wanted to tame the old horse so that he could be a companion with the golden dragon. Zuyun strolled leisurely, chasing the old horse all the way. What he still can't determine is whether Lao Ma is really running away in a panic, or whether he is looking for opportunities to fight back just like he escaped before. But no matter what, for Zuyun, staying away from Lao Zu at this time will do him no harm at all. But Zuyun didn't know that Lao Zu had a keen sense of smell. At this time, he was at the top of the cliff, but he still smelled the scent of Lao Ma and Zuyun. Humph, that's not right. These two smells seem to be that boy chasing the old horse. Lao Zu frowned, thought about it, and flew down the cliff, chasing him all the way. At this time, Zhu Feng's realm has reached the peak of the late foundation building stage, and is only one step away from the core forming stage. This kind of magic power has no bottleneck for him. After soaking in the blood pool for a while and stabilizing his realm, Zhu Feng left the demon refining tower. Of the few people here, only Jian 15, Jian 19, and Jian 20 have not been seen, and I don't know whether they are dead or alive. If they are alive, maybe they can help me reach the pill formation stage in one fell swoop. When the time comes, take advantage of the opportunity. Since Zuyun didn't go to Peepa Realm, it's time to take revenge. Putting the demon refining tower away, Zhu Feng quickly flew towards Bingzhou. He was inexperienced and forgot to ask directly about the pill formation stages. But after flying for a while, he smelled a smell of blood. When he got closer, he saw several footprints on the ground. Although there is solid land in the swamp, the soil is still softer than outside. Zhu Feng stepped forward and took a look, confirming that these footprints were not too old, and felt happy in his heart. It should be Xianxia and the others without a doubt. These blood stains indicate that some of them are injured. There are not many spiritual stones and elixirs left before. If you want to heal your injuries, you can only go to the Juhao Mountains. It seems that they are going there. Zhu Feng made a mental calculation and quickly changed direction and pulsed towards Juhao Mountain. At this time, the flying boat of Jian 19 and 2 people flew past quickly carrying 3 people. Soon, they saw the corpses of monster beasts, and their expressions changed. 20, look underground. Jianju said in a deep voice and couldn't help but slow down. I saw it, so many monsters, it seems they all came out of the demon refining tower. But, why are they all dead? Jian 20's face was solemn. Jianju was silent, observed for a while, and said, ignore it for now, let's get some demon pills to renew the life of Shishi. I don't see anyone around. Maybe some powerful people living in seclusion in the mountains have taken action. With that said, the 2 of them quickly descended and found that almost all of these monsters died in one move, which confirmed their previous thoughts. He must be powerful, otherwise how could he kill so cleanly? The 2 of them placed the sword 15 on the flying boat to rest, while they split up to collect the demon pills. Almost every demonic beast and demonic elixir were intact, which made them overly excited. Jian 19 cleaned up for a while, but suddenly heard Jian 20's exclamation. 19, come on, there's someone here. Jian 19 was startled and quickly ran towards Jian 20 with sword steps. As soon as they stopped beside him, they quickly saw the 3 demonic wheels lying not far away from the beasts' corpses. Only 3 people were seen, their bones were broken and they couldn't move at all. People from the magic wheel sect. Jian Jeju tightened the sword in his hand, and then poured his spiritual consciousness over, and then he was overjoyed. They were seriously injured, but they can be saved. Jian Ershi was also overjoyed when he heard this, and the 2 of them hurriedly ran at the same time. Looking at it, I found that it was indeed the 3 people from the demon Sky Lun. They were seriously injured by Lao Zhu's rake. Not to mention using their spiritual power, their physical strength had nowhere to use. That's great. I don't know which senior is powerful. This is simply slaying demons. Jian Jeju's eyes were focused, and he thrust the sword in his hand into Mo Tianlun's chest. Mo Tianlun couldn't speak, and when his body was in pain, his eyes suddenly popped out, and his upper body was slightly raised, but when Jian 20 drew out his sword, it hit the ground heavily. Ha, I didn't expect that the master of the magic wheel sect would die in the hands of my sword 19. Mo Tianlun is also a well-known strong man in Yezhu. Although Jian Erwin got a bargain, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in his heart. Hey, leave these 2 elders to me. After that, the sword 19 moves one by one, piercing the golden wheel and the yin wheel respectively. The 3 giants of the demonic wheel sect never imagined that it would be the people from Wanjian Mountain who took their lives in the end. They are still the 2 elders ranked at the bottom. Walk. The 2 of them pulled off the storage bags of the 3 of them and quickly ran to the flying boat. 15 is saved, so where should we go? Are we still looking for my second brother? Jian 20 asked. Hey, are you stupid? Jian Jeju said contemptuously, 3 storage bags, if we go there, won't we have to share them with the second brother and the others? If the magic sky wheel storage bag plus the 2 elders are included, I'm afraid the entire sect's wealth will be in it. It's better for 3 of us to do it than for 10 of us, right? How about we find a place and use these resources to practice peacefully? You're right. Jian 20's eyes lit up, he looked at Jian 15, then at Jian 20, and suddenly said, 19, then do you think it would be better to divide it between 2 people than 3 people? Hearing this, Jian 19 was slightly startled, and also looked at Jian 15. Did you mean? 19, if resources are not enough, we can indeed share the difficulties, but now there are so many things. Jian 20 looked at Jian 15 and said. Isn't this inappropriate? Sword 15, anyway. Hearing Jian Shiju's hesitation, Jian 20 was complacent and said with contempt on his face, 19, stop pretending. You dared to hunt down your father back then, and she 15 and we were just from the same family, besides, I didn't say kill him. After we use the demon pill to restore him to the point where he can take care of himself, we can just put him here. Besides, Wanjian Mountain has been destroyed, and we are just a casual cultivator. Jian 20 tries to convince Jian 19. Unexpectedly, Jian 19 was angry and said, you know what the hell? I chased my father to let him live. If someone else chased him, how could he escape the Hongduan Mountains? 19, you let him go. Jian 20 looked surprised. Jianju said coldly, everyone in Wanjian Mountain is ruthless, and so am I, Jianju. However, I am not as ruthless as you. 20, you have really opened my eyes today. I am absolutely not. Maybe give up 15. If you want to share it, I'll give you half and I'll take 15 away. With that said, Jian 19 released his spiritual consciousness and reached towards the storage bag in his hand. Unexpectedly, a sword light suddenly struck and slashed straight at Jian Jiju's hand. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 422. 20, what are you doing? Jian 19 never expected that Jian 20 would actually attack him, and he quickly tried to dodge. But at such a close distance and on top of the flying boat, he couldn't completely avoid it. Jian 20's long sword directly cut his arm. Blood overflowed and sprayed all over the face of Jian Shishi, who was hiding at the bottom of the boat. Feeling a warmth, Jian Chaiwu woke up and turned around. But the scene in front of him made him extremely confused. Jian 19 and Jian 20 were similar in strength. Jian 20's sneak attack failed, so Jian 19 took out his long sword, and the two quickly fought together. The swords and lights intertwined, and the two of them fought for nearly 100 rounds in the blink of an eye, and neither could do anything to the other. It can even be said that Sword 20 Micro has the upper hand. Jian Shishi took a breath, sat up a little, and whispered, what are you doing? He didn't know that Jian 20 had just left him here. 15, are you awake? Jian 19 looked at him with surprise, but he didn't expect to take this opportunity to strike with another killing move from Jian 20. Jianju responded in a panic and said loudly, 15, 20 not only want to kill me, but also want to throw you here. What? Jian Shishi was stunned for a moment, and at the same time there was a surge of energy and blood. He coughed several times and his mouth was full of blood. If he had seen Jian Er's indifference at that time, he wouldn't have been like this. But when he just woke up and heard these words, he couldn't accept it for a while. Wanjianshan is indeed ruthless, but as far as ordinary monks are concerned, they are still quite united. Otherwise, it would be impossible to kill the entire Yaesu without being invincible. But Jian 19 actually told him that Jian 20 was going to leave him here? I am a seriously injured person. Besides, it's not a critical moment. For a moment, Jian Chaiwu didn't believe it. There was a cold light in Jian 27's eyes. Now that he had taken action, he decided to walk all the way to the dark side and immediately poured dirty water on Jian 19. 15, don't believe his words. He obviously wanted to monopolize the resources in the storage bag and took action on me first. If I hadn't reacted faster, I would have become the ghost under his sword. Jian 15 looked at Jian 19, then at Jian 20, not knowing whose words to believe. Instead, there were 3 storage bags thrown at his feet. There are 3 words embroidered on each storage bag, Magic Wheel Sect. Just when he was confused, he heard Jian 26 say again, 15, think about it. At that time, Jian 19 was responsible for chasing down the remnants of the 7-star section. Have you not forgotten, who was he chasing? Jian Shishi searched hard in his mind and spit out 3 words after a while, Yesuanhua. That's right, Jian Jeju showed a scheming smile on his face, but only Jian Ju could see it. That was Juju's biological father. He dared to kill even his biological father. Such a ruthless person, and what can't be done? You fart. My father is still alive and well in the Ling Jian sect. Jian Jeju was shocked and angry, but as soon as the words came out of his mouth, he knew that he had been fooled. He naturally understands Jian Chaiwa's temper. To put it bluntly, he is also a foolish and loyal person. He let the sex enemy go, but he said it in front of him. 19. I didn't expect you to betray us, Wanjian Mountain. Sure enough, Jian Shishi's expression condensed, and his pale face became even more angry. 15. Listen to my explanation. Jian 19 turned around and said, but Jian 20 took the opportunity to strike with another sword. The two of them knew each other well. Jian 20 knew that the fight would continue like this, and he didn't know how long the fight would last. He deliberately spat out blood and used sword 15 to disturb Jian 19's state of mind. Jian Ju responded in a panic, with another sword mark on his hand. In spite of the pain, he quickly calmed down. Since Jian Chaiwa doesn't believe in himself anymore, what's the point of staying here? Suddenly, Jian Shiju had the intention to leave. 15. I hope you are well. It is said that there is nothing greater than grief, and Jian Ju is in such a state of mind now. Of course, knowing that Jian 20 was like this, he would definitely abandon Jian 15 after he left. But Jian Shishi doesn't believe in himself anymore, so what? Regardless of the loss of spiritual power, he quickly took out his flying boat and turned over when he forced the sword back 20 with one sword. Want to run? Jian 20's eyes narrowed, knowing that he would never be able to catch up with Jian 19 if he relied on his own spiritual power, so he quickly returned to his flying boat. He wants to catch up and kill everyone and silence them. 20, hurry up and give me some pills so I can help you kill him. Jian Chaiwa thought to himself that he would not be able to catch up for a while, so he took advantage of this time to recover on the flying boat. But he never thought that Jian 21 kicked Jian 15 down and went straight towards Jian 19. There are endless spiritual stones in the storage bag. He didn't believe it. Sword 19 could survive him. Jian Shishi, who fell to the ground, suddenly understood something, and a look of regret appeared on his face. I listened to one side and fell into the trap of 20 sword. But it's too late to regret. At this time, a long voice suddenly came from behind. Uncle 15th, what are you doing lying on the ground? Zhu Feng. Hearing the familiar voice, Jian Chaiwa shouted quickly. Hey, Uncle 15th Master, it turns out you like to stay with the corpses of monsters. Then, stay here forever. After the words fell, Zhu Feng had already approached Jian Shishi, and he put his palm on Jian Shishi's Tianling cover. Feeling that all the vitality and blood in his body were sucked away, Jian Chaiwa was horrified. He wanted to shout for help, but he couldn't make a sound at all. Until his consciousness faded, he had become a dried corpse. Zhu Feng stood up contentedly, exhaled a breath of turbid air, and showed a meaningful smile on his face. It seems that they also had an internal conflict, which is really a bargain for me. Zhu Yun threw out the demon refining tower with a grim smile and stood on it, chasing towards the south, which was the direction where Jian Shiju and the others were flying. Although the speed was far behind, Zhu Feng knew that Jian Shiju, who was eager to escape, would definitely not have time to change direction. Moreover, Zhu Feng had heard their conversation just now. Jian Shiju was out of ammunition and food, and would definitely catch up. As long as they stopped fighting, he would definitely catch up. At this time, Zhu Yun also gradually approached Lao Ma. After chasing all the way, Lao Ma's demon power had problems. Moreover, in panic, he had transformed into his original body and wanted to escape through the power of the demon body. Although the speed was much faster, the target became bigger for Zuyun. This meant that he would be more accurate with the nameless talisman later. Not only that, it was easier to hit with the whip. Zuyun did not fully understand the specific effect of the whip. But he only needed to know that the whip could work on the demon soul when it was thrown on his body. So Zuyun was not panicked at all. Little did he know. At this time, old Zhu was also catching up. After another round of chasing, the valley finally came to an end. Right in front of him was a towering stone wall. The old horse had nowhere to escape, so he stopped, staring at Zuyun with his eyes, but he could not hide his panic. As a demon king, the last time he suffered such humiliation was by the human cultivator with a hammer, Yeyong, thousands of years ago. And the scene in front of him seemed to be the same as that time. But the hammer was replaced by a whip. Zuyun also slowed down and approached slowly. But the closer he got, the more careful he became. After following for so long, he still wasn't completely sure. The reason he got close was that he thought it would be easier to hit with the nameless talisman later. But obviously, Lao Ma also thought of this, and chose to transform into a human form again at this moment. Zuyun's pupils shrank, and he made a quick decision. While he was still transforming, he quickly took out several nameless talismans and threw them over. "Boy, don't go too far." Lao Ma was terrified and quickly dodged to the side. But as his body changed, he was neither a human nor a horse, but was affected, and was immediately covered by several white light cages. Zuyun was overjoyed, and took advantage of this opportunity to take out the Fire Phoenix talisman. Go! As he threw out the talisman, several fire phoenixes transformed from fireballs, and the phoenixes rang out, rushing towards Lao Ma. "Ah!" Old Ma roared unwillingly, and in a panic, he didn't care about the dignity of the Demon King, and quickly turned over and fell to the ground and rolled to the side. But Zuyun grinned, rushed forward with swift steps, and rushed to the front in the blink of an eye, holding the whip and swung it. "Stop!" At this moment, old Zhu came and saw the scene and shouted in shock and anger. At the same time as the roar came, endless pressure surged towards Zuyun. Zuyun secretly said that it was not good. Why did he come at this time when he didn't come earlier or later? This completely interrupted his plan. If this whip goes down, I'm afraid I will be the first to die. Zuyun quickly used the thunder escape technique to dodge, and quickly took out the nameless talisman and held it in his hand. When he was concentrating, two golden lights fell rapidly in the sky, which immediately attracted the attention of old Zhu and Zuyun. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 423. Zuyun just glanced at it and recognized that it was Wang Jianshan's flying boat. He also saw that one person was running away and the other was chasing. But without much thought, he used the thunder escape technique, gave up the idea of whipping Lao Ma, and dodged away from Lao Zhu's pressure. But by coincidence, Jianzhu's flying boat suddenly landed not far from Zuyun. Exhausted and with nearly exhausted spiritual power, Jian-19 rolled down from the flying boat. Holding the long sword tightly in his hand, he stood up and stabbed Jian-20 who was chasing him. Zuyun's brows tightened. Is this an internal fight among Wang Jianshan people? He looked back at Lao Zhu, only to see that he had already run in front of Lao Ma and was not chasing him at all. But in an instant, Jian-20 also jumped up from the flying boat. The sword of Jian-19 hit the flying boat, but the sword of Jian-20 was slashed at the head of Jian-19. Just die. When you die, I will kill your father Yesuanhua and send you to reunite underground. Hearing this, Zuyun was shocked. Zuyun knew very well about Sun Suanhua's past. In this way, this sword 19 is Sun Suanhua's son. Moreover, it can be understood from these words that Jianjiju seems to know that Sun Suanhua is hiding in Lingjian sect. So, the 19th sword is to protect Sun Suanhua? Suddenly, a light flashed in Zuyun's eyes. Whether it was true or not, save him first. Get down here. Zuyun raised his hand, and the black sword appeared out of thin air, and his body suddenly jumped out, facing the sword of Jian 20. Jianjiu, who looked desperate and was waiting for death, had already closed his eyes. That sword strike just now was actually the final blow against the sword 20 on the flying boat. But the body's spiritual power was not much, and the sword lost its accuracy, allowing Jian 20 to counterattack. His flying boat landed here because his spiritual power was unsustainable, and he didn't even notice that Zuyun and others were here. As Zuyun's roar came, the sound of gold and iron fighting also sounded in his ears. Immediately afterwards, there was the scream of Jian 20. Jian 19 opened his eyes blankly, and saw Jian 20 flying backwards, and a long sword that broke on the spot. Thank you, fellow Taoist, for saving me. Seeing Zuyun's righteous action, Jianju said subconsciously. But in my heart, I felt that Zuyun's outfit looked familiar, but under this situation, I didn't have the nerve to ask. After all, Zuyun saved his life at this time. Jian Erwin raised his head slightly and looked at Jian Erwin. He recognized Jian 20's sword, which was his natal magic weapon. At this time, the natal magic weapon has been broken into two parts, which means that Jian 20 must be seriously injured, and he can be considered saved. Just as he was about to thank Zuyun again, a huge demonic power suddenly swept over him. Jianjiju didn't know that there were monsters here. He was stunned when Zuyun pushed him into the flying boat. At the same time, he turned over and skillfully made the flying boat soar into the sky. Jianjiju looked confused. Why did he feel that Zuyun was very skilled in flying boats? But when he saw Zuyun's solemn look, he still didn't ask questions. Instead, he looked along the position where the demonic aura had just struck. His expression changed again, and he finally understood why Zuyun escaped so easily. Lao Zhu's sneak attack did not work. When Zuyun drew his sword to help Jianjiju rescue him, he already knew that he would definitely alarm Lao Zhu. In fact, before Lao Zhu took action, Zuyun was already preparing to run away with Jian 19. He has absolutely no plan to deal with Lao Zhu, and if he continues to stay here, isn't he waiting for death? Lao Zhu's magic directly crushed the seriously injured Jian Erwin into blood foam. Seeing that his attack failed, Lao Zhu became even more furious and wanted to catch up with him, but he was afraid that Zuyun would take the opportunity to use the talisman against Lao Ma again. With shock and anger in his heart, Lao Zhu could only stare, watching Zuyun fly up the cliff and disappear into the clouds and mist in the mountains. Jianjiju was in shock, and his body couldn't help but tremble. The intensity of the demon power just now made him know that this was definitely the demon king he met outside the demon refining tower at that time. Unexpectedly, I thought I would die in the hands of Jian Erwin, but I didn't expect that not only did I survive, I even had a face-to-face encounter with the Demon King. At this time, he felt a sense of awe towards Zuyun. Thank you for your help, fellow Taoist, Jian 19, no, I am no longer from Wanjian Mountain. Yezi owes my friend my life. I don't know who my friend's name is, but Yezi will keep it in my heart. Hearing that Jianjiju was also named Ye, Zuyun was even more certain that he was his master's biological son. But when he chased Sun Suanhua all the way to Yunzhou, was he trying to hide the truth? If that's the case, then it's not like I helped him in vain. But Zuyun also knew that these words could not be said clearly at this time, so he simply rolled his eyes and said, "You're welcome, fellow Taoist Ye, my name is Zhou Huanghua." I have an old acquaintance in Wanjian Mountain. When I saw two fellow Taoists from Wanjian Mountain, I suddenly committed suicide. It's very confusing for them to kill each other, so I wanted to come over and try to persuade them, but I didn't expect that your fellow disciple would be so vulnerable. Zhu Yun said with a slight guilt, of course this was all pretending. The reason why Ergu's name was used this time was because Chen Hua was also a disciple of Wan Jianshan. Moreover, he is also the apprentice of Jian Shiba, one is 18 and the other is 19. They are so similar that they might be good friends. He is just afraid that he will reveal his secret. No one in Wan Jianshan's generation has anything to do with him. If there really is one, it can only be counted as Sun Qiniang. Oh! I didn't expect fellow Daoist Joe to have friends from Wan Jianshan. I just don't know which one it is. Yezi's eyes flashed. Well, they should be a generation younger than you, named Meng Beishi and Chen Hua. It turns out to be Yuan Tu and Xiahe. Jianju suddenly realized it and said with a smile, were Daiojo and them old acquaintances? That's right, Zhu Yun nodded. He was just looking for a reason to save Yezi. Now that he had fooled him, he naturally didn't want to get too entangled in it, so he changed the topic and said, why did fellow Daoist Ye say that he was not? Are you from Wanjianshan? Yezi's face suddenly darkened, and he told what happened between himself and Jian 15 and Jian 20. Zhu Yun sneered in his heart. He had already guessed that the people in Wanjianshan were hypocrites. What could they not do under the influence of profit? And the reason why they were able to unify Yezu hundreds of years ago was because of the Yaloo sect, their mortal enemy in the demonic way. The Yaloo sect was destroyed, then the Haori sect was destroyed, followed by the Magic Wheel sect, and finally Yezu was under their control. Without a strong enemy, their thoughts will naturally change. The same hatred doesn't exist. But what surprised him was that the people in Wanjian Mountain actually divided into two groups after being chased by the bird demon. Moreover, from what Yezi said, they seemed to be attracted by the explosion of the self-destruction array that surrounded the demon refining tower. So, it was Zhu Feng who triggered it? So is he dead or alive? Fellow Daoist Zhou. Seeing Zhu Yun meditating, Yezi thought he was worried about De Go and Chen Hua, so he called out softly, intending to tell him that the two people disappeared during the trip to the secret realm of Zilang Peak, but he didn't say anything. Instead, Zhu Yun asked first. Fellow Daoist, yeah, now that Wanjian Mountain no longer exists, and you don't want to think of yourself as a member of Wanjian Mountain anymore, have you thought about where to go? Yezi had never thought about this problem. Previously, he had been thinking about running as far as he could. When Zhu Yun asked, he himself asked uncertainly, Yunzo. Zhu Yun frowned slightly and said, what are you doing in that spiritually barren land? Yezi smiled bitterly and said, in order to protect my father, I chased him to Yunzo. His talent was not obvious, and he was immersed in other avenues. Now, he doesn't have much life left, I want to spend more time in his life. Before Yuan's death, accompany him on his last journey as a sign of filial piety. Hearing this, Zhu Yun was greatly shocked. Unexpectedly, there was something else hidden at that time. Master, I didn't expect that you thought your son was always trying to kill you, but you didn't expect that he was trying to protect you. Now that he has nothing to do with Wan Jianshan, he wants to be your son. It's a pity that you don't even know where you went. Zhu Yun sighed and said, your father is not in Yunzhou, and he has quite a long life. Meng Wei told him that he gave Sun Suanhua a longevity pill at that time. In total, there are still about 100 years. If he could use this path to break through the core formation stage, he could add hundreds of years to his time. What? Yezi was stunned immediately. Your father's name is Ye Xianming, right? He was hiding in Yunzhou Lingjian sect at that time. Listening to Zhu Yunyu's words, Yezi couldn't help but cover his mouth, and 2 lines of tears flowed from his eyes. Then, he whimpered, his legs fell to his knees uncontrollably, and he cried bitterly. Zuyun just watched like this. It wasn't until a long time that Yezhi wiped his eyes, with a look of determination on his face. Fellow Daoist Joe, since you can know the news about my father, you must have a close relationship with him. In this case, you are the same generation as my father, and I should treat you as a junior. After saying that, Yezhi suddenly prostrated himself on the flying boat. Junior Yezhi has met Uncle Joe. Zuyun was stunned. After a long while, he murmured, "Well, to be honest, I am your father's direct disciple. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills." Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 424. If Yezhi was driving the flying boat might capsize at any time. Fortunately, Yezhi has a very good character. Otherwise, 100 years later, if he hadn't said it himself, no one would have known that he did not catch up with Sun Suanhua on purpose. That, fellow Daoist Joe. Yezhi stood up in great embarrassment, touched his nose and said. Zuyun pondered for a moment and said weakly, "Actually, my surname is not Joe either." Yezhi almost couldn't breathe. In fact, what Zuyun thought was very simple. Although Sun Suanhua always wanted to recover the 7-star gate, it seemed to be his obsession. But thinking back on it now, when he mentioned that he was being chased by his son, his look was extraordinary. Maybe Sun Suanhua has been unable to break through for a long time, and this is his real knot. So Zuyun wanted to take Yezhi to find Sun Suanhua. I believe that with himself as guarantee, Sun Suanhua will definitely be able to believe his words. Zuyun has his own judgment, and at the same time he also understands Sun Suanhua's personality. He was kind by nature, and although he was trying to take advantage of himself at the time, he never had any intention of harming himself. My surname is Zhu. You are older than me. Can I call you brother yet? Zuyun was afraid that Yezhi would be irritated, so he said quickly. Yezhi's ugly face finally looked better. I thought he was still in the Danja stage after all, and was once an elder of Wanjian Mountain, but he almost made a big mistake. Brother Zhu, I really didn't expect that you are my father's disciple. So, you are also from the Lingjian sect? Then, Yuan Tutiu and Xiaohe seem to be your fellow disciples. Yezhi's tone suddenly became a little heavy. Zuyun secretly felt something was wrong, frowned and asked, "Brother Ye, what's your expression?" "Yes, they have a good relationship with me." "Well." Yezhi sighed, stepped forward and patted Zuyun on the shoulder, saying, "Brother, I wish you my condolences and accept the change. Both of them are disciples of the 18th. Who would have thought of dying in the secret realm of Zilang Peak?" Zuyun stared and said nothing. It wasn't until Yezhi noticed something was wrong that he looked at Zuyun and suddenly felt a little at a loss. "Best wishes, brother. They are not dead, they are alive and well," Zuyun said seriously. "Ah." Yezhi was surprised, and then said happily, "Really?" "Nonsense." Zuyun glanced at him sideways and said, "How long has it been since the Purple Langfang secret realm? I was separated from them in Chuzhu for less than a month." Yezhi said, "Brother Zhu, why did you have to go to Chuzhu?" He also went to Chuzhu with the Wanjianshan people, knowing that the environment there was not good. "Your father is in Chuzhu, I'm going to find him." Zuyun said angrily that there were some things he was not willing to tell Yezeming yet. He went to Chuzhu. Yezhi frowned slightly, then suddenly realized, "Is it for the spiritual fire?" "Right." Zuyun nodded and said, "He had a problem, so I went to Chuzhu to look for him. But I couldn't find him, and finally ran back to Yezhu. By the way, have you Wanjian Mountain captured Xian City?" "How did you know that we attacked Xian City?" Yezhi screamed in surprise, but then he felt relieved, shook his head, and said, the Tang Tiangang formation was too strong. Before we could capture it, we encountered a boundless beast wave, so we retreated. So, Tang Tiangang is not dead. Zhu Yun's eyebrows knitted together. The person he couldn't understand the most was Tang Tiangang. Although he seems to have no spiritual power, the strength of the formation is really terrifying. Moreover, they encountered a beast tide. Based on Xian City's experience in dealing with the beast tide, maybe he could actually survive. What a trouble! How do you wish me, brother? You have a grudge against Tang Tiangang. Ye Ziyi calmed down at this time. He was also a careful person, and he immediately saw Zhu Yun's thoughts. I have no grudges against him, but Tang Tiangang wants to kill me. I have no choice, I want him to die. Zhu Yun spread his hands, looked at Ye Ziyi and said, Tang Tiangang is nothing to worry about, but his formation is too strong, and he controls a group of men who are in the pill formation stage. He is sitting on a favorable geographical location, so it is really difficult to deal with him. So, Zhu Yun sighed, and then said, Brother Ye, please restore some spiritual power first. As he spoke, he took out some pills and handed them over. Huh. When Ye Ziyi took it over, he immediately let out a light sigh and said, your alchemy skills are not bad at all. Before Zhu Yun said anything, he heard Ye Ziyi say again, no, you are not only good at skills, but you are also very sure about the appearance. Brother Zhu, are you also pregnant with spiritual fire? Zhu Yun was shocked, he didn't expect Ye Ziyi to have such ability. But thinking that Ye Ziyi had no hostility, he simply admitted it openly. I didn't expect that my father couldn't find the spiritual fire, but you, the apprentice, found it? Ye Ziyi sighed, then took the elixir, sat down cross-legged and began to recover. Zhu Yun, on the other hand, slowly let the flying boat fall. After flying for such a long time, Lao Zhu would definitely not be able to catch up. However, he had no intention of running away. Instead, he took advantage of the fact that the whip could restrain them all, and simply took it away. This would be a great help for him to travel in the Peeper realm in the future. But before that, he needed to get Ye Ziyi settled. Condescendingly, Zhu Yun quickly found an open space. After falling, a group of children suddenly ran out from all around. It was the same group of children who were frightened when he was unconscious and woke up suddenly. Immortal, you are back again. The Immortal brought another Immortal this time. Wow, the Immortal is really rich. He broke one spaceship and got another one. Listening to these innocent words, Zhu Yun couldn't laugh or cry. At this time, Ye Ziyi had refined the medicinal power in his body. Listening to the laughter and laughter around him, they were all mortals, and he couldn't help but look weird. Best wishes, brother, this. Zhu Yun touched his nose and said, Brother Ye, you can rest here for a while, I have to deal with the Demon King. What? Ye Ziyi suddenly screamed, startling the children who were about to come over to greet Zhu Yun. Brother Zhu, you are going to die. That is the Demon King. Zhu Yun smiled and said, it's okay, I can run away, just rest here. Even now that he's here, Zhu Yun doesn't plan to change places again. This place is still some distance away from the cliff. He's afraid that if he delays for too long, the shackles on the nameless talisman will lose their effect. It will probably be difficult to catch these two demon kings by then. Bless you, brother, you. Ye Ziyi frowned and said, I'm not as strong as you, and I can't force you to stay. Otherwise, brother Ye, you are also a swordsman, and you have spiritual fire. I happen to have a kind of spiritual fire. The sword technique combined with fire. As he spoke, he took out an old book from his arms. This is. Zhu Yun looked at Ye Ziyi. Brother, I found this sword technique from a ruins. The sword technique on it is mysterious, but it only needs to be driven by spiritual fire. It would be a waste to keep it with me. Since you are my father's direct disciple, you just happen to use it. Come on, why don't I give it to you? Zuyun sighed slightly and then took it. Except for the whip, he never thought of using swordsmanship to subdue the Demon King. It's just that Yezii was kind-hearted, and in order to allow Yezii to stay and recover in peace, he couldn't refuse. Thank you so much, brother Ye. But, you still need to lend me your flying boat. Just take it. Yezii laughed, waved his hand, turned around and looked at the children, and couldn't help feeling relieved. Zuyun also smiled and took out some elixirs and spiritual stones and handed them over. Brother Ye, don't bully them. I will come back to you here after I have taken care of it. After saying that, he stepped onto the flying boat and flew away into the sky. After confirming the direction, he looked at the booklet. Fire Control Sword Technique. This name is quite common. I just have nothing to do, so why not take a look? Zuyun placed several spiritual stones on the flying boat one after another, then sat down cross-legged and turned the first page. The Fire Control Sword Technique. The fire controlled is not the spiritual power of fire, but the spiritual fire. The spiritual fire is attached to the sword, and the two become one, and the power is greatly increased. Not only can it kill the physical body, but it can also kill the soul and spiritual consciousness. The higher the grade of the spiritual fire and sword, the more powerful the sword technique will be. Seeing this, Zuyun thoughtfully took out his black sword. He didn't know the grade of the sword. But this is the sword in the immortal mansion, so it probably won't be too bad. Maybe, it's a fairy sword? In addition, spiritual fire. My own is sky fire. How about some practice? I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 425. With this thought, Zuyun could no longer suppress it. The first step in fire control sword technique is to knead a spiritual fire, and then attach it to the spiritual sword. Zuyun summoned Fen Tianyan without hesitation and gave the order. Fen Tianyan would not disobey Zuyun's orders at all, and threw himself on the black sword without saying a word. In an instant, the black sword turned into a fire sword. But more like a blazing stick torch. Zuyun silently recited the spell he had just memorized, and the black sword in his hand immediately rose up with a heaven-destroying aura, as if everything would be cut off. At the same time, Fen Tianyan's cheerful mood also came to his mind, and it seemed that he liked to appear in this state. Is this the function of fire control sword technique? Zuyun pondered for a while, and did not continue to look at the subsequent sword moves. Instead, he thought that if I used the fire sword to use the Wuji sword technique, would I be able to achieve unexpected results? If it wasn't allowed at this time, Zuyun really wanted to try it. When he used the Wuji sword technique recently, he always converted the power of chaos into the power of thunder. The main reason is that he mainly deals with monsters, and the thunder spirit power has natural restraint against monsters. Forget it, let's not use the fire control sword technique for the time being. For now, to deal with those two demon kings, I'd rather use the whip first. Zuyun retracted his mind, and at the same time removed Fen Tianyan, and the black sword was replaced on the immortal mansion sword mountain, and then he took out the black whip. Patting his waist, there were still some unknown talismans stuffed there. After thinking about it, Zuyun said to himself, when this talisman is used, it turns into a white light cage. Let's call it the light prison talisman. It would be great if we could know the true function of this talisman. After flying for a while, Zuyun could already see the cliff. Looking from above, it looked like a ravine created by an infinite giant with an axe. I hope they haven't left yet. Zuyun murmured in his heart that if he were an ordinary person, he would probably avoid the Demon King when he saw him, but Zuyun dared to come back after escaping, which no one dared to imagine. Including Lao Zu. At this time, he was guarding the old horse, with a look of anxiety on his face. Before being suppressed into the demon refining tower, they had been practicing together, from ordinary monsters to the Demon King. This kind of emotion is definitely not understandable by ordinary monks. Moreover, betrayal is rare among the demon clan, which is the biggest difference from the human clan. Humph, Lao Ma, how are you feeling now? At this time, Lao Ma suddenly opened his eyes, and Lao Zu asked hurriedly. It still doesn't work. The whip seems to have left a scar on my demon soul. It seems that it will be irrecoverable in a short time. Unless there is a magic medicine to warm the demon soul. Lao Ma said solemnly. Lao Zu stood up and was about to leave, saying, Humph, I smell several elixirs here. They are still old. Can I help you pick them up and have a look? No, Lao Ma said quickly, that kid is so scheming, who knows if someone is waiting for you somewhere. And the whip has such a miraculous effect, plus the talisman can trap our demon pill, no, no, no. Humph, what should we do? You can't just sit there and wait for death, right? Seeing Lao Ma stopping him, Lao Zu shook his fat ears, extremely anxious. He has always followed Lao Ma's lead. If it weren't for him, I'm afraid he wouldn't have been able to cultivate to such a level. Now that I see Lao Ma like this, I naturally feel uneasy. We're going to Shiwanda Mountain. It's not advisable to stay here for a long time. Even if that kid doesn't ambush us, if he comes back to kill us, it will be detrimental to us. Every time Lao Ma used his demon power at this time, the demon soul would suffer severe pain, but Lao Zu could not do anything alone. If he met Zuyun alone, he would probably be led around by the nose and played around. Humph, okay, let's leave now. Lao Zu returned to his true form, and he was clearly a big white pig, but both his body and limbs were all made of strong muscles. The extremely white pig skin is still glowing with white light. This undoubtedly allowed Zuyun to easily discover their location. At this time, Zuyun was hiding in the clouds and mist. He didn't expect that Lao Zu and Lao Ma stayed here for so long. It seems that they want to run away. In this case, the effect of the light prison talisman has not disappeared. Zuyun felt happy and secretly took out a few more talismans. Under the cover of the clouds and mist, he quickly threw them at the old horse sitting on the pig's back. The light prison talisman turned into white light and shrouded it away, but Lao Zu turned his back to Zuyun and didn't notice it at all. When Lao Ma realized that the white light was coming and another light prison was hooded towards him, he couldn't help but scream, no, that kid is here. Think about how these two demon kings have ever been in such a mess. Lao Ma did not turn over and jump off Lao Zu's back. He believed that Lao Zu could definitely avoid it. This has been a tacit understanding since cultivation. Sure enough, Lao Zu lived up to his expectations. After hearing Lao Ma's call, he suddenly used his demon power on his two hind legs. In Zuyun's view, it seemed that faster and thicker white light jumped out. It's pretty fast. Zuyun's whereabouts had been exposed, and it was obvious that they were like frightened birds, so they simply put away the airship and flew towards them quickly. It's not that he can fly faster alone, but that he can be more flexible without a flying boat. At this time, Lao Zu had turned around and glared at Zuyun, while Lao Ma on his back tightly grasped the hair on his neck, his face also not looking good. Zuyun also slowly landed on the ground, holding the whip and swinging it hard on the ground. Snap! When the crisp sound came, Lao Ma felt his demon soul tremble. And Lao Zu's pupils shrank. After he met Lao Ma, he had heard Lao Ma talk about the horror of this whip. At this time, even the momentum was so shocking. What kind of treasure is this? Zuyun laughed and was very relaxed. If Lao Zu had not also been hit by his light prison talisman, he would never dare to face it like this. This is tantamount to seeking death. But Zuyun never does anything without confidence. The primary purpose of this trip is to subdue them, just like the golden dragon. I don't know if I can walk sideways in the Peeper realm after gathering all the 12 demon kings. Zhu Yun's attitude undoubtedly put more pressure on Lao Zhu and Lao Ma. Seeing that they dared not move rashly, Zhu Yun simply took another step forward, while waving his braid in his hands, as if he could continue to throw it to the ground at any time. He, kid, what do you want to do to me? Lao Zhu simply made up his mind and said coldly. He wanted to use this to give himself courage, but he didn't expect that his momentum would weaken a little after he said this. Zhu Yun understood, smiled even more, and said, nothing, I just want to admire the style of the 2 demon kings. Lao Zhu, don't talk to him, this kid is very weird, it's best for us to leave first. Lao Ma lowered his voice and said to Lao Zhu's ear. Before Lao Zhu responded, Zhu Yun showed a contemptuous smile and said, how can a dignified demon king want to run away when he sees a kid like me in the Jindan stage? Lao Ma secretly thought that it was not good. Lao Zhu didn't have much brains. Zhu Yun's words would definitely anger him. As expected, upon hearing this, old Zhu stiffened and his breathing became heavier. He knew without even looking that old Zhu's eyes must have glowed red. He quickly opened his mouth and said, boy, come to me if you have anything to say. Old Zhu has no grudges against you. Old Ma, this kid doesn't take me seriously. Wait a minute, I'll crush him. After saying that, old Zhu shook his body and threw old Ma off. At the same time, he roared, and saw 2 fangs in his huge mouth extending rapidly, growing to a length of 10 feet in a moment. Although Zhu Yun was secretly happy that his plan had succeeded, he did not dare to neglect it. After all, he was the demon king. If he was not careful, he would be the only one to die. As he focused his eyes, old Zhu's body had turned into a white light, and he rushed towards him with solid steps. The ground shook slightly, showing how powerful old Zhu was. Unfortunately, Zhu Yun never takes brainless enemies seriously. When Lao Zhu was still more than 30 steps away from him, Zhu Yun quickly threw a mud wall talisman straight ahead. At the same time, his figure flashed, and when he appeared again, he was not far from Lao Ma. Then, he whipped him. Submit to me, or die. After Lao Zhu's rage, Lao Ma had been worried about him, but he didn't expect Zhu Yun to dare to come straight at him. Unfortunately, he couldn't use any demon power at this time. This whip directly caused his demon soul to hurt, his legs became weak, and he knelt in front of Zhu Yun. And behind him, there was a loud noise. It was Lao Zhu's fangs that crashed into the mud wall. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 426. Let Lao Zhu go, I surrender to you. Kneeling on the ground, Lao Ma said with a painful expression. All this was caused by him. If it weren't for his idea and coveting the secrets of Zhu Yun, the 2 of them wouldn't have fallen into this situation. At this time, if only I choose to surrender, Lao Zhu can escape. As it stands now, if I don't sacrifice myself, I'm afraid Lao Zhu will repeat his mistakes. Do you think you still have time to care about others? Zhu Yun raised his eyebrows and whipped him again. Snap. The pain from the previous whip hasn't disappeared yet, and this whip hits again. Lao Ma is in unbearable pain, but he still said stubbornly, if you don't let Lao Zhu go, then we'll be dead. Although I can't use my demon power at this time, it doesn't mean that I can't use my demon power to explode. Hearing these absolute words, Zhu Yun couldn't help but tense up. I almost overlooked this matter. A cultivator in the nascent soul stage can self-destruct his nascent soul and perish together. Not to mention the demon king who is at the same level as the nascent soul ancestor. But at this moment, there was another loud noise behind him. It turned out that old Zhu broke through the earth wall and turned back to rush towards Zhu Yun. I promise you, if you recognize me as your master, I will let him go. Zhu Yun was unwilling, but he had no choice. This was also the first time he encountered such a situation. The demon beast was more loyal than the cultivator he met. This is really ironic. Master. The old horse immediately fell to the ground, showing his submission. Zhu Yun said nothing and slapped the old horse with one palm. Suddenly, the old horse disappeared out of thin air and was sent into the pasture by him. But old Zhu didn't know. Moreover, he had increased his speed and strength to the extreme at this time. The ground rumbled and shook continuously. There were rubbles rolling down the cliffs behind Zhu Yun. However, when approaching Zhu Yun, they will be quickly crushed by his flowing spiritual power and cannot get close at all. Old Zhu, let you go. Zhu Yun quickly used the thunder escape technique to dodge away. Old Zhu couldn't stop at all, and his huge body crashed straight into the cliff. He. Old Zhu roared and retreated madly, but he couldn't get out no matter what. Instead, more rocks fell from above. Such a funny scene, Zhu Yun couldn't laugh. Originally, he wanted to subdue both demon kings, but he had promised Lao Ma that he couldn't subdue Lao Zhu again before convincing him. In desperation, Zhu Yun had to leave here. However, he still had selfish thoughts. It would be better for Lao Zhu to stay here forever, and it would be much more convenient to come out after he persuaded Lao Ma in the Xianxia ranch. At that time, he could also let Lao Ma be a lobbyist. Sighing, Zhu Yun decided to find a place to enter the Xianxia. Not long after he left, a figure emerged from under the cliff. I didn't expect Zhu Yun to be able to escape from the attack of the Demon King. Through the demon refining tower, Zhu Feng felt the majestic demonic energy below. Seeing Zhu Yun leaving quickly in a flying boat, he guessed that Zhu Yun was running for his life. The cliff was still shaking, and Zhu Feng decided to go down and take a look after a little hesitation. Such a movement, and the demonic power has always maintained a terrifying level. This situation does not look normal. Wealth and honor are sought in danger, and I, Zhu Feng, have always had a great fate with the Immortals. Thinking of this, Zhu Yun quickly stepped on the demon refining tower and flew off the cliff. As soon as he landed, he saw an amazing scene. I saw a huge white pig shaking its butt hard, trying to pull its fangs out of the stone wall. But no matter how hard it tried, it was useless. Zhu Feng understood that the shaking of the cliff was obviously caused by the pig demon king. But this is too stupid, his brain is not bright enough, and I don't know how he cultivated to the level of demon king. Zhu Feng's eyes turned, and he shouted, "Hey, big stupid pig, you are also a demon king, and you can come out of it if you turn into a human form." Hearing the voice behind him, Lao Zhu stopped his movements immediately. The surroundings suddenly fell into a strange silence. Zhu Feng did not speak, but just tightly grasped the demon tower in his hand. For a long while, Lao Zhu made a muffled sound, and then began to change his body shape. I saw his body slowly getting smaller, and soon he turned into a white-skinned, fat, and big-eared male cultivator. "Boy, you are the Tower Master." Originally, Lao Zhu, who had just regained his consciousness, thought that Zhu Feng was just an ordinary foundation-building cultivator. He wanted to vent his anger on him, but before he finished speaking, he saw the small and exquisite demon tower in his hand, and he couldn't help frowning, and his heart was even more flustered. If Lao Ma was here, he didn't need to do anything at all, just listen to Lao Ma's arrangements. But at this time, he had no idea. He didn't know how the demon refining tower suppressed the monsters. Zhu Feng was very good at observing people's expressions. When he saw Lao Zhu suddenly change his tone and call him the Tower Master, he couldn't help but come up with a plan. "Yes, I am the Tower Master. Why don't you come to my tower quickly?" There were no more monsters in the tower. Zhu Feng thought that he should be able to control a monster king for his own use. If this pig monster is subdued, let alone in Yeazhu, even if it goes to Peeper Realm, it will be much easier to absorb some Jindan stage at that time. Yes, that's right, go to Peeper Realm. Zhu Feng made a decision immediately. At this time, he was not 100% sure about dealing with Zhu Yun. When he came out of the demon refining tower and encountered the terrifying self-destruction formation, he realized that he didn't recognize that formation at all. In this way, not only is his realm weaker than Zhu Yun, but also in terms of formation, he cannot compare to Zhu Yun. Not only is it incomparable, it is clearly far inferior. It is said that you should make the most of your strengths and avoid your weaknesses. My strength is my fast cultivation speed. If he goes to the Peeper Realm first and finds some Dan formation stages or even nascent soul stages to devour and absorb, then his level up will not be as fast as just taking a flying boat. At that time, all he has to do is stay in Peeper Realm and wait for Zhu Yun to come to his door. And this pig demon king looked at the fat head and brain, looked silly, and took him over to be a thug, which couldn't be better. Humph, I finally got out of the tower, and you still want me to go back? No way. Lao Zhu groaned and tried to fly away from this place. When Zhu Feng saw this, he felt a little anxious, thinking that the pig demon king was the key step for his future breakthrough, the most important chess piece. If he was allowed to leave at this time, all his plans would be in vain. No. Zhu Feng had an idea and said, "Are you trying to find that monk who was in the early stage of pill formation?" As soon as these words came out, Lao Zhu suddenly felt murderous, stopped suddenly, and said loudly to Zhu Feng, "How do you know?" "Hey," Zhu Feng grinned and said, "Of course I know. And, I also know where he went. Do you want to know? If you want to know, come to the tower quickly." As he spoke, he threw the demon refining tower in front of him. Under his control, the tower quickly became 3 feet tall. The bronze door can accommodate Lao Zhu just enough. Unexpectedly, Lao Zhu showed disdain and said, "I have remembered his smell, how can I not know where he went? Boy, I don't know what the hell you did to become the master of the tower. But the realm is too weak to let me in." With that said, Lao Zhu stood up. But as soon as his feet left the ground, his body stiffened again. With a look of disbelief on his face, he muttered to himself, "Strange, why is that boy's breath gone? By the way, where is Lao Ma?" Lao Zhu had just lost his mind and acted entirely on instinct. He didn't even notice that the old horse was taken away by Zhu Yun. Zhu Feng was so happy that he controlled the demon refining tower and smashed it suddenly. Ouch! The sound of breaking through the air came, and when Lao Zhu was awakened, the bronze door of the demon refining tower was already wide open, and a huge suction force came from the dark door. Lao Zhu shouted in surprise and quickly jumped into the air. No matter how stupid he is, he knows that if he falls into the demon refining tower, he may not be able to find his old horse again. How could the majestic demon king be willing to be trapped in the tower for so many more years? Boy, how dare you! Lao Zhu was furious, avoided the suction force in the tower, and slapped the tower with his palm. Bang! The boundless power directly hit the demon refining tower with a loud bang. However, even if the demon refining tower floats in the air, it remains motionless. At the same time, the tower rotates and continues to aim the bottom door towards Lao Zhu. There is still that huge suction force, so close. In the distance, there is the smile of Zhu Feng, who succeeded in his treacherous plan. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 427. At this time, in the Xianxia ranch, Lao Ma and Xianxia stared at each other, and saw a hint of gloating in each other's eyes. "Lao Ma, I didn't expect you to have this day." Xianxia recovered a lot at this time, and also knew that this was Zhu Yun's place. Only those who recognize Zhu Yun as their master can enter. Seeing Lao Ma at this time means that Lao Ma, the Demon King, is almost the same as himself. Heh, Lao Ma naturally didn't want to lose face, and mocked, "I'm better than you. Look at you, you must have been beaten by the master a lot, right? Otherwise, why are you so thin?" As he said, he also stretched out his little finger to gesture. Xianxia was furious. How could he not know what Lao Ma meant, especially after they could all transform into human form? They understood the contempt even more. "Old Ma, you are looking for death." The golden dragon roared, turned around and shouted to Zhao Kamang, "Old Zhao, help me beat him up." These days, the golden dragon has learned more or less about the monsters in the ranch, and knows that Zhao Kamang is the strongest and is deeply trusted by Zhu Yun. And that batch of monsters is currently under the management of Zhao Kamang. As for the three dogs, they are useless. Although the red candle beast is also good, it is a little weaker. So he also intentionally or unintentionally got closer to Zhao Kamang. At this time, he has little demon power and his body cannot grow bigger. It is definitely not possible to use this to deal with old Ma. Of course, he has other thoughts, but he has not shown them for the time being. It's just that he didn't expect that old Ma was different from him. He was not found and taken in by Zhu Yun, but he took the initiative to recognize Zhu Yun as his master for old Zhu. Even if the demon power in his body is restricted by the light prison talisman, it is more than enough to deal with the golden dragon. His expression condensed slightly, and he directly enveloped his demon consciousness towards the golden dragon. Suddenly, the face of the golden dragon changed drastically, and he screamed, "You!" Old Ma ignored it and looked at Zhao Kamang. If it were usual, he would never take this level of monster seriously. But even the golden dragon was so polite to him, it seemed that this Xianxia beast had an extraordinary status. He would need to stay here for a long time in the future, and there should be no conflict. But to his surprise, Zhao Kamang had no intention of taking action. But there was no fear of him, the Demon King, in his eyes. At this time, Zhu Yun appeared. "Stop, you will have to fight side by side in the future." A faint voice came, and old Ma immediately retracted his demon consciousness, and at the same time said respectfully to Zhu Yun, "Meet the master." Zhu Yun nodded slightly, and then said, "Practice well here, and tell Lao Zhao if you have anything. Of course, when you are free, guide them to practice more." In fact, Zhu Yun also had thoughts. After all, these two demon kings were stronger than himself. If it weren't for the whip in his hand, how could it be so easy to subdue them? Although he believed that the two demon kings could not cause any trouble in the ranch, he could not guarantee anything. For now, he trusted Zhao Kamang and Sangumor. As for the red candle beast, it was because his intelligence was a little weak. "Master, that..." Seeing Zhu Yun leave after he finished speaking, Lao Ma hurriedly shouted, "What's the matter?" Zhu Yun turned around and asked. He guessed that Lao Ma would definitely ask about the light prison talisman, but he himself did not understand it, so he would not reveal any information about it. As expected, Lao Ma asked cautiously, "Master, the demon pill in my body." Zhu Yun smiled slightly and said, "Just practice with peace of mind, and the light prison will be unlocked." After that, he fled to a distance. He did not choose to leave because he planned to try the fire control sword technique. Xianxia looked Lao Ma up and down. Although he did not say what it was obvious that Lao Ma had also suffered a loss from Zhu Yun, and the problem was with the demon pill. The demon pill is the foundation of demon cultivation. If there is a problem with this demon pill, future cultivation will definitely be affected. He couldn't help but gloat and said, "I thought you were really fine. Seeing your arrogant look, you turned out to be even worse than me." Humph. The old horse's face turned cold. He looked around and saw two horses in the distance. He transformed into his original form and shrunk his body to the size of Little Gray and Little Brown, and ran over there. He and the Golden Dragon didn't have a good relationship to begin with. It's better not to see them than to see them. If he wanted to know more about this place, he thought it would be better to have more dealings with the two spirit horses. After seeing Lao Ma leave, Zhao Kamang said, "Lao Jin, I still have to advise you. Although the master is usually easy to talk to, if you disobey his wishes and fight with Lao Ma here, I can't guarantee what will happen." Jin Jiao frowned and said, "Why do I feel like you are hinting at me to teach you how to break through to the next level?" Zhao Kamang said indifferently, "I am different from you. I failed to practice the 10,000 demons art and became a demon." 10,000 demons art. Jin Jiao was stunned, and then shocked, saying, "How is it possible? I heard in the early years that after failing to practice the 10,000 demons art and becoming a demon, it is impossible to retain human intelligence. Moreover, there is no possibility of continuing to practice. I don't need to lie to you. Otherwise, how could the master let me manage so many monsters?" Zhao Kamang said, and pursed his lips towards the other side of the lake. A gleam of light flashed in Jin Jiao's eyes. It seems that his master still has many secrets that cannot be told. At the same time, in the demon refining tower, Lao Zhu had regained his consciousness, and looking at the familiar scene, he felt a little confused. Although he has stayed in the demon refining tower for thousands of years, he has always been heartless. Lao Ma takes the lead in everything. He does whatever Lao Ma says. Apart from having no freedom, he is also very comfortable. But now, alone, looking at the empty and lifeless surroundings, he panicked. In front of him was a boy who was no more than 10 years old. From the aura on his body, he could recognize that he was the current tower master. Moreover, he vaguely felt that this young man had a deeper control over the demon refining tower than the previous one. However, this tower master only has the aura of the late stage of foundation building. Is he serious? Are you the Pig Demon King? At this time, Zhu Feng spoke calmly, with an expressionless face, as if Lao Zhu would kill him if he was even slightly dissatisfied with Lao Zhu's answer. "Humph, that's exactly what I am. Little brat, do you want to suppress me by putting me in the tower?" Lao Zhu's eyes were rolling. "But I haven't used my brain much for thousands of years, and my brain is not very bright anymore. Suppressing you? I'm not interested." Zhu Feng shook his head and said, "However, I think it is quite good to absorb your demonic power and vitality for me to use." "What's the meaning?" Lao Zhu felt a touch of coldness for no reason. "Hey," Zhu Feng raised his eyebrows, and then used his magic power. A huge and powerful absorbing magic power suddenly appeared, instantly covering Lao Zhu. However, Zhu Feng's realm was too low after all, and he could only use his hands. It only works if it relies entirely on Lao Zhu. But even so, with the status of old Zhu Demon King, he still felt the weirdness in it. This suction force seems not to be affected by realm at all. Even if he is the Demon King, he can't help but feel frightened. He just doesn't like to use his brain. It's not that he is brainless. If you want to absorb this Demon King, let's see if you have the ability. The Tower Master before didn't dare to do this to me. After all, Lao Zhu took a step back warily. But this action invisibly revealed some fear in his heart, which was visible in Zhu Feng's eyes. Zhu Feng smiled slightly and stretched out his hand to dance. Suddenly, the suppressive power in the tower suddenly fell. Lao Zhu's level was instantly lowered. "Boy, you actually..." Before Lao Zhu finished speaking, he saw Zhu Feng slowly running towards him. In his eyes, the speed is very slow. Lao Zhu wanted to dodge, but his own movements were even slower. It wasn't until Zhu Feng's punch hit his eye socket hard that Lao Zhu turned half of his body. The fist is not very strong, but Lao Zhu can still bear it. But how could he endure being slapped in the face by a kid in the foundation building stage? Immediately, Lao Tzu was filled with rage, and the demonic power in his body was running wildly. But due to the limitations of the light prison, the demonic power suddenly broke down. Suddenly, Lao Tzu woke up. Obviously at this time, I am no match for Zhu Feng, the tower master. Lao Tzu now knew that this boy might really kill him. Thinking of this, Lao Tzu finally became a little scared. "Spare your life, spare your life." Lao Tzu immediately begged for mercy. A meaningful smile flashed across the corner of Zhu Feng's mouth. "Wouldn't it be over if I said this earlier?" After the words fell, Zhu Feng punched Lao Tzu's other eye again. Bang! This time, Lao Tzu did not dodge. After taking the punch, he said in a loud voice, "Tower Master, I have already begged for mercy, why are you still hitting me?" Zhu Feng grinned, "It's nothing. If you were punched in the right eye, it would be symmetrical if you were also punched in the left eye." After hearing this, Lao Tzu vaguely felt that this master still had a child's heart, and he didn't know whether he could use it and escape from his control. But for a while, he couldn't think of any way, so he could only endure the humiliation for the time being and see if there was a chance to meet Lao Ma in the future. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 428. At this time, Zhu Yun held the black sword in his hand. On the black sword, the flames leaped, and under his control, the burning sky flame was completely attached to it. Feeling the majestic fire power in his hands, Zhu Yun was not too excited. Through the connection with the burning sky flame, he knew that the fire sword could be stronger. The premise is that the burning sky flame and the black sword still need a certain amount of running in. The reason why Zhu Yun did not move was actually waiting for the burning sky flame to tell him whether the running in was done. Standing for a long time, Zhu Yun was bored, and suddenly a flash of inspiration flashed in his mind. "Don't I have the fan magic weapon that helps the fire? I wonder if I can make the connection between the two closer." Thinking of this, Zhu Yun hung the black sword covered with fire in front of him, and then took out the fan. After concentrating a little, Zhu Yun poured spiritual power into the fan, and then fanned it towards the fire sword. Woo! With a flash in front of his eyes, Zhu Yun saw the fire rising sharply on the flame. This scene seemed to help the red candle beast break through before. Zhu Yun was overjoyed and didn't think much about it. He blew his fan again. Woo! The fire rose again, but it was much weaker than the first time. But it's better than nothing. In his joy, Zhu Yun didn't want to stop at all, and kept adding fuel to the fire. Until the voice of burning sky flame sounded in his mind, telling him that he had reached the current limit. Zhu Yun put away the fan and held the black sword full of flames. An endless heat flow came, which was much higher than the temperature of burning sky flame. But the magical thing is that this high temperature can't hurt Zhu Yun at all. Zhu Yun's mind moved slightly, and he began to dance with sword moves. Wuji sword art has no fixed moves. In other words, every move is a move in the sword art. As long as Zhu Yun has practiced it, this move will be integrated into Zhu Yun's body and become his instinct. When fighting, the body will react most accurately and will be one step faster than others. This is the magic of Wuji sword art. No moves are better than moves, all moves are sword art. This is why Zhu Yun did not read the content of fire control sword art to express his gratitude. Because Wuji sword art covers all sword moves. In the wild dance, Zhu Yun was immersed in his mind, and every move was as he pleased. In the dim, he had a little understanding in his heart, but he did not catch the sudden flash of inspiration, so Zhu Yun did not stop at all and kept dancing. Little did he know. When the burning sky flame and the black sword were combined, the two demon kings, Jin Xiao and Lao Ma, were already alarmed. Their demon consciousness was sharp, so they could naturally detect the shocking fire power and rushed here. Along the way, they tacitly did not speak. Until they were still several miles away from Zuyun, they saw a figure dancing constantly between the flames. The two looked at each other, and Lao Ma finally spoke. This sword move seems ordinary, but it contains some great truths. While speaking, his face was extremely solemn. The golden dragon did not speak, his brows were furrowed. The more so, the more he felt that it was a wise choice for him to recognize Zuyun as his master at that time. After a while, he also spoke, "This is the sky fire." Sky fire? Old Ma was shocked and looked at the golden dragon in disbelief. Yes, it is the sky fire. The earth fire cannot reach such power. The golden dragon said very sure. Old Ma frowned. The fire was indeed very strong, but he was not as sensitive to spiritual fire as the golden dragon, a monster with a trace of true dragon blood. It seems that our master is more mysterious than the previous Yayong. Old Ma said in a deep voice, with mixed feelings in his heart. The golden dragon suddenly chuckled and said, "Yayong is a ruthless person, so we are all afraid of him. On the contrary, this master is affectionate and righteous. Maybe he can lead me to the road to heaven." Old Ma did not speak. He knew what the golden dragon meant. But he has always been on guard against the human race. The longer you live, the more you know. No matter how weak the human race is, it is still the spirit of all things and the leader of all things. As for their demon race, the human race is insidious and cunning. He has seen too many of them. They killed the enemy together, but suddenly attacked and killed people when they were dividing the spoils. This is also one of the reasons why he and Lao Tzu can depend on each other and practice from ordinary demon beasts to the realm of demon kings. Thinking of Lao Tzu, Lao Ma sighed again, and a thought rose in his heart. If Lao Tzu followed him and recognized Zuyun as his master, would he really be able to embark on the road in the future as Jin Jiao said? As soon as this idea came out, it grew wildly in his heart. However, Zuyun was practicing sword tactics at this time, and he did not dare to rush forward. If this is really the sky fire, with this power, it is really possible to hurt him. So, Lao Ma took the initiative to communicate with Jin Xiao. In addition to finding out some information about the ranch, he also intended to show his goodwill. This surprised Jin Xiao. Jin Jiao was defeated by Zuyun and had no other intentions. Seeing Lao Ma's attitude, he understood. They would inevitably work together in the future, and he told the information he knew. Zuyun was unaware of all this. At this time, he was completely immersed in sword dancing. Every move made him feel that he was close to the spiritual light. But when he was about to catch it, he felt that he was at the end of the world. For a moment, his temper became a little angry, and the speed of his sword moves became faster and faster. The fire burned the air around him and made a whirring sound. But until he exhausted all the spiritual power in his body and Fen Tianyan's fire became a little sluggish, Zuyun still gained nothing. Zuyun finally felt a little frustrated. How can enlightenment be so easy? With a murmur, he let Fen Tianyan return to the fire spirit pearl, while he looked at the black sword in his hand, dazed. Without the fire of Fen Tianyan and the attachment of thunder spirit power, this black sword looks too simple. The chaotic spiritual power in Zuyun's body was exhausted, and he couldn't do anything at this time. He didn't catch the spiritual light just now, and he didn't want to refine his energy to restore the chaotic power. But as soon as he said these words to himself, there was a bang in his head, like thunder. Simple, simple. That's right, it's simple. Suddenly, he was crazy, holding the black sword and laughing. This laughter directly made the two demon kings look at each other in shock. Both of them found a look of confusion in their eyes. They are also experienced and well informed in their cultivation, and they are definitely not comparable to Zuyun. But in the scene just now, it was clear that Zuyun had some insights from the sword refining, but they didn't notice it at all. But Zuyun's reaction at this time, This realization is not ordinary. Just when they looked away, there were sounds of piercing the sky coming from Zhu Yun's side. I saw Zhu Yun, who had no spiritual power, danced with the black sword. There is no blessing from Fen Tianyan, and no thunder spirit power attached to it. It's a black sword. It looks extremely ordinary. But it brought out extremely powerful sword power. There is no difference in the sword moves, they are still so casual. Either stabbing forward or chopping, just to name a few. But it is not weaker than the previous fire sword technique. It's strange. There is no sky fire, so why do I feel like his sword can cut me in half when it hits me? Jin Jiao muttered to himself and said to his side, "Old Ma, what do you think?" Lao Ma shook his head and said, "It's too simple, you can't see anything at all. It seems like he is playing casually." Yes, Ye Yong was so casual with the hammer back then, but when Ye Yong smashed the hammer down, it had the kind of aura that would destroy the world. But he didn't. Jin Jiao stood up and looked carefully for a while to make sure that he had read it correctly. "I can't see through it, I can't understand it. Maybe, this is the difference between human cultivators and us demon cultivators, right?" Lao Ma sighed and said with emotion. "Compared with demon cultivators, humans have too many restrictions. Spiritual roots, skills, understanding, opportunities and longevity. As for their demon cultivators, they only need to follow the steps, absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, swallow the essence of daily use, and if they are lucky, eat some exotic flowers and herbs, hide in any place, and their cultivation will come naturally. Only when the demon king breaks through to the latter realm will he suffer a catastrophe. Moreover, the longevity of demon cultivators is many times longer than that of humans. In the mortal world, there are sayings like 1,000-year-old king and an 80,000-year-old turtle, let alone them. Forget it, let's go. Right now it's better to practice with peace of mind." Lao Ma turned around and decided to leave. Zhu Yun's sudden realization also stimulated him. "Thinking of the light prison shackles on my demon core, I felt very uncomfortable. Although Jin Jiao's problems are different, they are very similar. They are all limited in strength. Both of them know that once they lose their use value, maybe in the future, will be ignored. In this case, if there is any kind of fairy fate, I'm afraid it won't be their turn." Looking at each other and smiling bitterly, Jin Jiao and Lao Ma returned to the lake. As for Zhu Yun, his sword moves suddenly stopped opening and closing, and instead the tip of the sword was pointed at the ground and kept dancing. After a moment, he put away the black sword. 4 words were left on the ground. "The great road leads to simplicity." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 429. At this moment, Zhu Yun suddenly realized the essence of Wuji sword art. This is something that the immortal emperor had never realized back then. It's not that Zhu Yun's innate comprehension is stronger than the immortal emperor, but that the immortal emperor has learned and seen too much. There are supreme immortal arts in the immortal world, each of which is a mysterious magical power, and it may be a principle with a casual strike. The sword is the first of the 18 weapons. There are sword mountains, sword pools, and this mysterious black sword in the immortal mansion, which is enough to show that the immortal emperor has also used a sword. Then naturally, he also has several exquisite sword techniques. And Zhu Yun has almost never learned sword art. The most used sword energy is released. Although it belongs to the sword art, it is actually more like a spell. The sword art should be like the 10,000 swords mountain, using spiritual power on sword moves to fight with people in close combat. Therefore, in terms of sword art, Zhu Yun is like a blank sheet of paper. The Wuji sword art, based on the principle of simplicity, integrates all the moves into the body's instincts. When approaching, relying on the body's instincts to react, it will naturally be one step faster. There is no most gorgeous move. There is only the most suitable sword style. And Zhu Yun, it is because he understood the word simple that he found the true meaning of the Wuji sword art. I didn't expect it to be like this. Zhu Yun reached out and stroked the blade of the black sword. His excitement had long been vented. At this time, he was extremely calm. Buzz. At this time, the black sword also made a clear sound, as if responding to Zhu Yun's words. Haha, do you agree with me? Zhu Yun found it interesting and said subconsciously. Buzz. Who would have thought that the black sword rang twice in a row, and Zhu Yun suddenly came back to his senses, and was surprised. When he first got the black sword, he felt that the black sword had shown a fighting spirit. At that time, this fighting spirit also affected Zhu Yun. But Zhu Yun was not reckless. He tried the sword and ran away. The so-called fighting spirit only existed for a few breaths. Then, the black sword was no different from the usual swords. Even other swords could feel the grade to some extent. But for this sword, he couldn't even tell the material. At this time, he could get the response from the sword, and Zhu Yun's heart jumped, and he couldn't help but say two words. Sword spirit. Could it be that this sword has a spirit? Impossible. If it has a spirit, why was it hammered into the ground by Yayong at that time, and has stood for thousands of years since then? Zhu Yun frowned slightly for a long time, and found that he seemed to have entered a misunderstanding. Is there a sword spirit? Can't you just ask yourself? If you can understand what I say, you can buzz 3 times. As soon as the voice fell, the sword body really began to tremble. Buzz buzz buzz. 3 times. Zhu Yun took a breath and forced himself to calm down. The black sword has a spirit. In this way, this is a spiritual weapon above the magic weapon? No. This is the sword in the immortal mansion, and it is on the sword mountain. How can it be a spiritual weapon? It should be an immortal sword. You are the immortal sword, right? Zhu Yun did not know why he asked this question. Logically speaking, this is inappropriate. What if it is not? What will the sword spirit think? Who knows? Buzz buzz buzz. 3 more clear sounds. This time, Zhu Yun's expression froze, and his breathing also stagnated. It is really an immortal sword. This. I have used the immortal sword for so long without knowing it. When I used the fire control sword technique just now to let the burning sky flame attach to the sword, I thought it was all the credit of the burning sky flame. It seems that this has a lot to do with the black sword. That's right. If it is an ordinary sword, how can it withstand the fire of the burning sky flame? Although the burning sky flame is a heavenly fire, it has always existed in the immortal mansion. In other words, the burning sky flame is also the fire of the immortal emperor. Zhu Yun's eyes flashed with a gleam, and he decided to go out and ask Huang Longshu again. In the medicine garden, the yellow dragon tree is the oldest. However, before that, Zhu Yun decided to give the black sword a name. I used the Wuji sword art to find out that you have a sword spirit. Why not call you Wuji sword from now on? If you like this name, just ring it. How about it? Zhu Yun felt that he had finally chosen a nice name. But he never thought that the black sword didn't respond for a long time. Why, is this name not nice? Zhu Yun asked curiously. Buzz. Okay, Zhu Yun touched his forehead and thought for a while. Wuji sword is not okay, then the invincible sword, is it domineering enough? Still silent. Peerless sword. Sword of immortal slaying. Sword of dragon slaying. Sword of god slaying. Zhu Yun racked his brains, but the black sword remained silent. Zhu Yun was numb until he spit out the 3 words of chaos sword. Buzz buzz buzz. At this time, the sword body of the black sword trembled violently. Zhu Yun's eyes lit up. "Do you like this name? Buzz. Okay, then I'll call you Chaos Sword." Zhu Yun responded, and thought to himself, could it be because he used the power of chaos? But now that he has a name, he has completed his mission. Putting away the Chaos Sword, Zhu Yun flashed away from the ranch, returned to the Immortal Mansion, and came to the Medicine Garden. The Chaos Sword escaped from Zhu Yun's control, flew back to the top of the Sword Mountain, and fell into the groove. Seeing Zhu Yun transformed into a metal spirit body, the spirit medicines knew that Zhu Yun had something to do with him. "Mr. Huang, do you know the origin of the Black Sword? Why didn't the Immortal Emperor practice the Wuji sword art at that time?" Zhu Yun pointed to the top of the Sword Mountain and said. "The master of the Wuji sword art couldn't practice it to perfection, and it also affected the sword art he originally mastered. So the master simply stopped practicing and threw the sword back to the top of the Sword Mountain." Huang Longshi shook the branch and said. "Is that so?" Zhu Yun thought about it, and then asked, "The Black Sword? This Black Sword appeared together with the Wuji sword art. I only know this. The rest is so long ago that I can't remember some of it." Huang Longshi shook his head. Zhu Yun knew that he would not lie to him. He thanked him, turned back into human form, sat on the edge of the void, and began to refine the chaos force to fill the seeds in his stomach. At his current state, he no longer needed to concentrate. He only needed a thought, and his body would absorb and refine freely. Zhu Yun thought that the yellow dragon tree was the elixir planted by the Immortal Emperor after all, and the Black Sword came later. It was probably obtained by chance by the Immortal Emperor, and he didn't know the secret yet. But what's interesting is that the Wuji sword technique actually affected the sword techniques that the Immortal Emperor was originally proficient in. After thinking about it, it was because the Wuji sword technique contained the simplicity of the Great Way, which affected the other sword techniques. Yes, the essence of the Wuji sword technique is to include all sword moves, and it is not limited to this. It seems that the Wuji sword technique also has an extraordinary origin. I don't know what the connection is with the 5 Elements Chaos Sutra that I practiced. At the same time, the Black Sword appeared with the Wuji sword technique. Maybe the Black Sword was tailor-made for the Wuji sword technique. Zhu Yun shook his head and threw all these questions out of his mind. It's too early to think about these things at this time. I'm just an ordinary cultivator, and I haven't even been to the Peeper realm yet. I'm actually thinking about the fairyland after becoming an immortal. I'm really a little bit floating. With a bitter smile, he retracted his mind and glanced at his lower abdomen casually. His face suddenly changed. He saw that the gap on the seed had become a little bigger. There was even something looming in the gap. He quickly looked inside and poured all his spiritual consciousness into it, but he couldn't detect any abnormality. In doubt, he withdrew his spiritual consciousness and returned to the original state to look again. He could still see a light green sharp corner in the darkness of the gap. He frowned for a long time, and after letting the seed stop absorbing the chaotic power, he concentrated again to investigate. But it didn't make him see more clearly. Strange, what's going on? When he broke through the realm, Zhu Yun found that he was different. Others were in the Jindan stage, but he turned out to be a seed-like thing. If it weren't for the fact that he could use the stored spiritual power normally like the Jindan, he almost thought he was not a normal person. But at this time, the seed had mutated. How could he resist thinking about it? Stopping Qi training would not let him know more, so Zhu Yun had to continue to train Qi, while thinking hard about what his problem was. Was it because of practicing the 5 Elements Chaos Sutra, or because he directly absorbed the chaos force? He had no one to ask for this kind of question. If it was normal, it would be fine, but if it was different from others, would he be caught and tied up, and his seeds dug out and planted in the spiritual field? Maybe, the things planted at that time would tell the truth. Unfortunately, he must be dead. No way. Zuyun suddenly opened his eyes, this must not be discovered by others. But the only way was to go to Peeper Realm, join a sect with some years, and read the ancient books, maybe he could know something. So now, he could only arrange other things a little bit. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 430. Zhuhao Mountains. Zuyun had already restored his spiritual power to its peak. After he identified the direction a little, he flew quickly towards the small mountain village. The flying boat turned into a golden light, and by the time it reached the mountain village, the sky was completely dark. Originally, he didn't find a place. The entire mountain was pitch black. It was Yezhi who discovered Fei Zhou's golden light and quickly focused his sword light to absorb Zuyun's attention. During the time Zuyun left, he had recovered some spiritual power and was sitting in the open space, waiting for Zuyun to come back. I wish you, brother, are finally back safely. Yezhi sighed with emotion. Of course he recognized the golden light of this flying boat. I was originally worried that it would be someone else from Wanjian Mountain. But then he thought about it, Jian who knew his situation, was already dead. Even if Jian and others came, he didn't need to be afraid. Not to mention, Jian and the others were traveling together, so there was no way they could only have this one flying boat. Brother, yeah, I plan to leave. Zuyun gets straight to the point. Go? Where? As soon as he asked the question, Yezhi's expression changed. Peeper Realm. Yeah. If I stay here any longer, I might not be able to continue to break through. Zuyun didn't tell the truth, he was worried about something going wrong. Instead of risking being discovered by someone in the Peeper Realm, he was more afraid of the seeds sprouting and bursting his body. On the way here, he couldn't help but think about the light green corners, which seemed like some new buds. But Brother Zhu, you are only in the early stage of forming pills and are going to the Peeper Realm alone. Yezhi frowned, somewhat disapproving of Zuyun's decision. It doesn't matter, I will be careful. Think about it, I have been alive and kicking since I came out of the Lingjian sect for so long. What difference does it make if I go to the Peeper Realm now? Zuyun pretended to be relaxed, but in fact he knew that under the same level gap, the nascent soul stage would be more difficult to deal with. It was definitely not as simple as when he faced the Demon King. The first time he met the Demon King was when the Golden Dragon only had 20% of its demon power. This gave him experience in dealing with it. When he faced Lao Ma and Lao Zhu again, Lao Ma was also afraid, and at the same time he designed to separate them, and then he separated and attacked them. But having said that, I don't know if Lao Zhu is still at the bottom of that cliff. Brother Zhu, from what I see, you'd better not go to Peeper Realm for the time being. Before he finished speaking, he was directly interrupted by Zuyun. Brother, yeah, I have made up my mind. I will see you again when I come back this time. I just want to inform you and leave you a letter. Letter? Seeing the unquestionable tone of Zuyun's words, Yezhi did not continue to ask questions, but turned to the letter. Well, letters. Zuyun took out a pen and paper, and then condensed a ball of fire to illuminate the place as a night light. The pen is a talisman pen and the paper is talisman paper. But he didn't have ordinary paper and pen with him, so he could only waste a little bit. Yezhi was puzzled, but after Zuyun wrote 4 words, he felt warm in his heart. Master personally declares, disciple Zuyun can be your guarantor. When Yezhi had something to hide, please let go of your prejudices. In addition, everything is well for the disciple, he has succeeded in cultivation, and has gone to the Peeper Realm to find the path. Don't miss me. Unfilial disciple, Zuyun offer it up. The talisman paper was only of this size, and Zuyun could not write many words, so he wrote long sentences and short sentences. He stood up, took a picture of the letter to Yezhi, and then said with a smile, Brother, yeah, don't be weird, brother, I'm afraid that after you meet the master, there will inevitably be a fight. Just tell me my name when the time comes. Yezhi said quietly, my father is a deadbeat, but he can't beat me. After all, my realm is higher than him. That's true, but telling me my name will at least allow him to calm down, and then you can give him the letter. Zuyun patted Yezhi on the shoulder and asked, Brother Ye, what are your plans next? In fact, I have solved 2 batches of monsters, and the remaining monsters probably won't become a big problem. Zuyun conquered a group, and then joined forces with the Magic Wheel sect and Lao Ma to destroy another group. Both groups were comparable to the realm of pill formation. Thinking about it, the remaining monsters, even if they are numerous, are only close to the foundation building stage at most, so there is nothing to worry about. Yezhi smiled and said, this place is good. During the day, I saw several little children who were weird and clever, so I plan to teach them some skills. Otherwise, if I stay in this mountain for the rest of my life, I'm afraid I won't know how big the outside world is. Brother Ye, you mean, you want to teach them how to become immortals? Yehan sighed and said, actually, I also have selfish motives, the 7-star sect has been destroyed, and now Wanjian Mountain has disappeared. Maybe I can teach them some skills and reshape the 7-star sect. A warm current flashed through Zuyun's heart. After thinking for a moment, he took out the Introduction to Elementary Talismans, Elementary Spiritual Medicine Identification and other books that Sun Suanhua had given him at the time that were placed in the ring. This is... Yezhi's eyes lit up. Zuyun smiled and said nothing, and continued to take out some of Sun Suanhua's experiences and experiences that Zuyun forced him to keep before he left Lingjian sect, plus some books that he had read. There are more than 1,000 copies of all kinds of them. Yezhi's eyes kept flashing, and he already understood what Zuyun meant. I wish my best brother, the most correct decision in my life was not to be deceived by Wanjian Mountain and to protect my father all the way to Yunzhou. And after thinking about it, my father's most correct decision was to accept you as his disciple. Zuyun smiled and said, Brother Ye, this place is quite far away from both the north and south Yeazhu. Maybe if we keep a low profile here, we can really bring the 7-star gate back to the light of day. Yeazhu is full of waste and is waiting for prosperity. By the way, Zaofa Sex Fuzhongyi is also dead. In other words, you are now the #1 master in Yeazhu. Yezhi's face turned red and he said, Brother Zhu, please don't say that. In terms of strength, your early stage of pill formation is much stronger than mine in the middle stage of pill formation. Ha ha ha. Zuyun smiled heartily and said, but brother Ye, I have one more suggestion. It's not good to stay here while cultivating immortality. Why not go to Yunzhou Lingjian sect to have a look, maybe you can get unexpected gains. Zuyun was thinking that Sun Qiniang was still in Lingjian sect, and she had returned to Wanjian Mountain as Jian Tianming, so Yezhi must have seen her. You can surprise him then. Yezhi thought for a moment and said, that's true. If you stay at home, your practice will inevitably be disturbed. But I don't know anyone in the Lingjian sect, so I went there rashly. It doesn't matter, I'll write another letter later. Then, just go find Ergu. Zuyun was already imagining Yezhi's expression when he saw Sun Qiniang. After writing a letter to Ergu and giving it to Yezhi, Zuyun left Fiazhu behind. It would have been more useful for Yezhi to push Zuyun away, but he was dismissed with a few words. One is that Yezhi needs to take the child to Yunzhou. The second is that he can go back and find the ship that was left behind by Sword 20. Listening to Zuyun's firm and reasonable tone, Yezhi had no choice but to agree. Zuyun also left behind many low-level elixirs, talismans, elixirs and other items that he could not use, and gave Yezhi some high-level talismans for self-defense before leaving. Alright, little kids. Anyone who wants to become my disciple of the 7-star sect, come here. Regardless of the fact that it was dark at the moment, Yezhi suddenly roared. A rustling sound came, followed by bursts of footsteps. In the darkness, whether they were half-grown teenagers or children wiping their noses, they all stood in front of Yezhi. Not far away from them were the parents of these children. The look of hope for his son to become a dragon can be vaguely seen through the darkness. Zuyun flew all the way and soon returned to the cliff. He did not fall down in a hurry, but listened carefully for a while. After finding that there was silence around him, he was sure that Lao Zu had left here. At that time, Jian 20 died unexpectedly at the hands of Lao Zu, and he clearly remembered that Fiaz who was not put away by Jian 20. After landing at the bottom of the valley, Zuyun looked around and found the slightly damaged flying boat. Then after thinking about it, he went to the stone wall that Lao Zu had hit. There are no traces except 2 large holes in the stone wall. Zuyun muttered to himself, it seems that Lao Zu is not a pig brain. These 2 holes are so intact. It must be that he finally turned into a human form and escaped. In fact, this was also the purpose why he asked Yezhi to take people to Lingjian sect. After all, the Demon King is not that easy to mess with. He didn't take the initiative to say it, but just let Yezhi imagine that he had solved Lao Ma and Lao Zu. Just as Zuyun was about to leave, he suddenly discovered that there seemed to be unusual traces on the ground. He looked intently and immediately frowned. Not far in front of you, you can vaguely see a hexagonal hole, as if it was smashed out by the demon refining tower. A bad thought suddenly occurred in his heart. Could it be that Zhu Fen not only survived, but also came here to take away Lao Zu?